Good afternoon and welcome to the Polk County School Board's work session on this fine day. We will now call the work session for June 11th, 2024 to order. I would like to thank everyone for being here, especially I see our staff present, and appreciate your availability and being accessible to help and address any questions we have. We're humbled to serve alongside of you and the most highly educated workforce in the nation. I would like to start by reading our Who Are We statement. We are the Polk County Leadership and Governance Team. If we were to pick one phrase to define us, it would be student-centered, because when we come together to work, we lean on our diverse backgrounds and experiences to ensure that our decisions, they're focused on providing a high-quality education for all students. And the four most important things to our governance team are: number one, operating with integrity; number two, respecting our students, staff, families, and each other; three, establishing a culture where stakeholders feel valued, supported, and have opportunities for personal and professional growth; and number four, supporting an approach of continuous improvement to ensure student outcomes. Collectively, we need to work on behalf of the children that we serve and find avenues of agreement so that we can govern the district in an effective manner. There's no acceptable alternative. We will always collaborate in a respectful manner in order to enhance opportunities for each student and staff member. We will not disparage others. Our students will thrive because we will remain committed to supporting the whole child. We hope to engage and empower our students and stakeholders to create a community of lifelong learners. At this time, I would like to turn over the meeting to Superintendent Hyde to lead us in our work session. Superintendent?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of the community and staff. Thank you for being here. We will begin this meeting, as we do all of our workshop sessions, with inviting one of our community-based partners to come to the dais. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Beth Hesseltine. She is the executive director with Lakeland, and board members, you will recall, I recently was able to participate in their fundraising efforts. Unfortunately, I did not raise enough funds to kiss a pig. I blame all of you. So in the future, we'll try harder. And it was a very adorable little pig. I got to see it on the way out. So I want to say thank you for allowing me to participate and support the program. So, Beth, it's all yours.
Thank you. Well, first, let me just introduce myself a little bit more. I am a retired school teacher for Hillsborough County School Board. I taught first and second grade for 8 years and then retired to become a mom. During that time, I was, I guess the best word would be, accosted to come and help with a nonprofit. And I started out as a volunteer, and 14 years later, I serve as their executive director. A little bit about me personally: I have a daughter who was a very advanced reader and just loved school, and everything came easy. And then I had a son who could not recognize his name and struggled with everything. He was later medically diagnosed as dyslexic, and so there is a passion for what we do in my soul. I am happy to report my 22-year-old son is now a senior in college. He is a kinesiology major, and he is doing his internship at Watson Clinic this summer. So I believe in all children, where they start from and where they end, and what we service is the adults in Polk County. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about us, where we came from, why we have a passion for what we do, and so maybe you'll understand the gift that you give us and our development director and how we play a part in Polk County School Boards too. So we were founded in 1995 by a bunch of retired school teachers who sat around and knew there was a need. And they had a lot of students come to them, adult students that were struggling, and they did not fit into the regular classroom. They did not fit into adult school. They were too low to enter in, and they knew there was a need. And all of you that are in the school board realize how expensive tutoring could be, and oftentimes these people could not afford to do that. So that is how Read Lakeland came about. And I think the thing that I like to say the most is our statistic that is probably even higher than this at this point, but approximately 24% of all adults in Polk County are functionally illiterate. And that is the census, and the reality is you have to be able to read to do the census, so that is probably a higher number. And what we consider functionally illiterate is they read below a fourth grade reading level. And I know with a dyslexic child that students from kindergarten up learn to read. After fourth grade, they are expected to read to learn, and that's when everything starts happening for them. So we service a lot of different, we service folks that have learning disabilities. Even though we are not able to guide them, we can help them. We service people that have struggled, been moved around a lot. We just get a little bit of everyone. So that's who our students are. Who we get a lot of our students from is West Area and East Area adult schools. They recommend that they come to Reed Lakeland. And I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why they come. They come into one of your schools and they say, I'd like to get my GED. I dropped out of school for different reasons. I was moved around a lot. I didn't finish this. I need to get my GED. Well, they're unable to pass the tape. They're unable to do the lowest entry level. So we get a phone call and say, I have this person that we need you to work with. How does Reed Lakeland work? Well, we go to that student. We have them meet us at the library, which is a very public place, so it's safe for both our tutors and our students. And our program coordinator meets them there, does an evaluation on where they are, what their grade level is, and then we match them with the tutor. Well, who are our tutors? A lot of our tutors are adults in our community that are not just educators, they're just wanting to give back. So they meet with this student. Some of them meet once a week, some of them meet twice a week, some of them meet a lot more than that. And they build a relationship with them, and they help them through that journey of going on and getting. Now, it's not always their GED that they're wanting, just a different level of education that they can get a better job. So, who are our students? Like I said before, we've had them from age 18. They're always 18 or above, so we deal with adult students. And in our last, we had one that was 82 years old that came to us that said, all I want to be able to do is read the Bible to go to when I'm in church. So we've got varied from GED to I want to go to college, and I want to just do something very basic like read to my grandchildren. I think one of our students that I will always have a special place in my heart with, her name is Sabrina. She was in your school system. She went to West Area. She could not get in. She was too low. She and no one in her whole family had ever received a high school diploma. No one in the whole family. She came to us and worked with us for a very long time, and she went back, passed her GED. Her goal was to become a nurse. We helped to pay for some of her entrance exams, and she is slowly taking classes at Polk State that we've sponsored her for, and she is in the medical assistant to be part of the medical assistant program. Her goal is to become a nurse, and knowing as long as she's worked at all these, I really think she will. So that is the relationship that we all have with you, and that's what we do. And Sabrina is just one of the very few of the students that we have the same relationship to. Where do we get our students besides West Area, East Area? We put flyers in all the libraries. We talk to Talbot House. We've had the police department and the fire department come across folks that need our help, and that's who we get a lot of our students. And what have you all done for us? Superintendent Hyde has given us the position. It is a temporary position for our program coordinator, Diana Oropeza, and she is the one that helps to match and put the students together. And by doing this, we help you all get them up to the point to go on to the adult school, and we pull them up to that area. So that's what we do for Reed Lakeland. I've got a lot of slides that I'm talking too much. The other thing that we're most proud of, every one of our services are 100% free. That's why Superintendent Hyde was part of Kiss the Pig, because we raise money, and also with grants, we raise money within the community to be able to pay for the books, the workbooks, the tutor training, and our students never pay a dime. And that's one of the things I can say with the most pride, is they never, ever pay a dime. So I know we've been offered at many occasions books, and I always say, we need adult books. Thank you for the offer. But what we do is we order from adult publishing companies, so they are low-level literacy books, but they are desirable for adults to read. We don't want to hand them Dick and Jane or Dr. Seuss. So we want something that they can enjoy reading, be proud of, read to their families. So that's what we offer. And again, all of these are free of charge. The research shows that every dollar donated to adult literacy returns $33 to our community. It's one of the things I'm proud about, because if we invest in our students at this age, then even as adults, they come back in our community and they give back. We've had so many amazing stories at our Kiss the Pig this year, and Superintendent Hyde heard we had a student from Venezuela that came over. She's a dentist in Venezuela. She did not speak English, so she was one of the ESOL students that came in. She is now working to become a dentist in the United States. She has passed her initial exam. She's now a dental hygienist, so she started literally assisting and now is a dental hygienist, and she is continuing on. So many of these students just pass through our doors that become part of our community and help the outcome of who we are. So we're super proud of a lot of those. Our students, we also work with West Area, the Florida Literacy Coalition. That is a statewide coalition that passes down grants to us and funding to help these students. But our main goal is to get these adults over the age of 18 to get to where they need to be, whether that's their GED, back in school, a better job. And with the economy and how hard life is right now, we are seeing more and more students coming through our doors. So we are just grateful for your commitment to us. We will continue to send students your way. You continue to send students our way. And I think I have run out of my time, so I will stop, and feel free to ask any questions that you have.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you. Thanks for being here today. I personally have met some people who, very up in age, who had developmental disabilities as a young person and didn't learn to read or didn't learn to read to make it in life, and they've used the service, so I appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's helping far beyond what we can imagine. My question is, do you have a partner or similar organization in the Haines City, Davenport area? Are they sending people all the way to you?
Well, here's the truth of the matter. There used to be 4 literacy councils. We are the last one.
Wow.
We are the ones that made it through COVID, and just because of the support of the school board and our community, others have just had to close their doors. And due to the fact that a lot of them are funded by United Way because they're family literacy, we are just totally adult literacy. They get other funding, but there is not a literacy council except in Polk County anymore in this area.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate, because we do, especially the ESOL community in the Davenport area would really could use this. I appreciate that. I just want to I'm sorry he didn't get to kiss a pig, but I found, how long is that fundraising effort? Because I kind of saw that last minute. I would love to promote that a little bit.
Well,
earlier.
I will tell you, and something I'm very proud about, and I was actually speaking with Jeanette about it today. We are going to be celebrating our 30th year of Read Lakeland.
Okay.
So we're really proud of that goal, and we are going to be running a longer fundraiser this year. We're actually going to do between 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
We kind of did that pre-COVID, and then we kind of shortened it because that's just what we had to do. And so I will make sure that you have lots of information, and Jeanette has already told me that she would be willing to do that, so you already have a representative. And
Okay, thanks.
oh, and we need to get her also.
I heard Miss Miller volunteer.
No.
We had put her on the
I
docket
told him
too.
he purposely told us about it late so we wouldn't have time to raise
We had
money.
a week.
Okay, so next time we'll have lots of money to raise so Mr. Hyde can kiss pigs.
That's right. We'll have a whole group. Anyone else?
Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for bringing this information. You are doing great work in our community, and we're here to support you in any way. I was curious, how close was he to kissing the pig? Because that just gives us like this goal for next time to make sure that he actually does get a chance to kiss the
Well,
pig.
you all need to work a little bit harder, and we'll put him right up there at the top for sure. We'll have a whole Polk County Public Schools team. So how about that?
Indeed.
And we can work for that.
It sounds like we have a.
It sounds like we have a lot of people that would be willing to do that. Anyone else?
And I'll wrap up because I don't see any other questions or comments, but I will say, you know, it was a very well-organized event, and they give you all the tools and resources at your disposal. They're very supportive throughout the process. But I will also say that the story that was shared by the young lady was really impactful. For her to come here, to immigrate here, and to now be finding success because she was able to develop her language skills. And she wrote a very eloquent and very lengthy speech, and she worked through it. And she got a round of applause and a standing ovation because she was just that impressive. So to know that we're having that kind of impact, and think about the economic impact, not only in her own family, but here in our local community. So it's a great program to be a part of, and we're thrilled to continue to partner with you. So
I thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank all of you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Carrie Barkin, Don Robertson, and Andy Baldwin are all here. Board members, as you recall, several years ago, the board had asked to make sure that we brought grants before the board for a quick summary so that you knew kind of what the grant was going to be applied to and the utilization. And so at this point, we're very fortunate to be applying for a very significant grant to expand our Head Start opportunities. If I recall correctly, Carrie, this will give us the opportunity to double the current enrollment, if I recall that from our last conversation. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, we are requesting permission to apply for the Head Start grant expansion, which is the first opportunity that Head Start has given the right to serve more than the 942 on our current grant. So basically, we worked with Ms. Robertson and Mr. Baldwin to double what we're doing, which would mean being able to take the services that we provide currently at the 23 schools and 57 classrooms, braid that out to where all of the classrooms at the campuses that have an early childhood classroom would be able to have the benefits of Head Start, which is the comprehensive program that focuses on the whole child, from family supports and family engagement, as well as to the educational piece in the classroom.
And I'll see if there's any questions or comments. Ms. Miller?
I just want to say, I know you're going to tell us more about it, but I sit on the Head Start Policy Council with families, and I'm going to brag a little bit on Head Start right now and Carrie because she doesn't do this for herself. But I can tell you that most Head Start programs are not full at capacity, and we are one of them, and that's because of this team. I can also tell you that as long as I've been on this board, we've had to ask for waivers because we haven't met the requirement of serving students with disabilities at 10%. I can tell you that now we're exceeding that because of leadership of Head Start in this team. So since she will not do that probably, I'm here to tell you that I'm very thankful for the people working in Head Start. I'm thankful for the alignment with our ESC department. I'm thankful for the alignment to family interaction. We have, when I tell you those parents come and report 20 and 25 parents at parent meetings in pre-K, that's telling me that our parents are interested, and we just have to engage them and keep them longer. So I'm sure the board would love to hear about this grant. I know a little bit about it because of how I serve, but I want the community to know that we have moved light years with this leadership in this department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, thank you very much.
Okay. Can I just stay up here on the VBK contract next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next up is the Early Learning Coalition of Polk County Agreement for our voluntary pre-kindergarten and preschool programs. Carrie, it's all yours.
That's the annual contract with the Early Learning Coalition, which is the funding source. The state is the voluntary pre-kindergarten, which any 4-year-old in the state of Florida is able to participate in. We offer the VPK program in all of our classrooms, and it helps fund the other classrooms that are not Head Start funded, which include the Title I pre-K and the VPK straight classrooms where children can come for half the day or pay for the extended full-day wraparound care. So we just need permission to continue as a VPK provider.
Seeing no questions or comments, I think we're good.
Yep, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, we'll bring up Ms. Candy Amato. She may be next door. Last time I did this, she came running in from the apple a day. Board members, we'll come back to this item. We'll go ahead and move forward. Capital Planning Part 3. Board members, you recall that Mr. Fix and his team were committed to ensuring, is she coming in? Okay, we're moving on. They were committed to ensuring that they were providing you with more detailed information about our processes and our systems that we currently have in place. Today, this is their third presentation to you about capital revenue for a district that's growing as fast as we are, and for a district that's having to consider the number of education options that we offer as far as new school construction, expanding current facilities, renovating older facilities. It's important for us to make sure that we get information out there, not only for yourselves, but also more importantly for our school district community members and stakeholders, that they understand how capital funds and capital revenue are managed and how they're applied. So at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. McLemore.
Good afternoon, board members. Superintendent stole a lot of my opening remarks, but I will say I'm thankful to be supported by Mr. Fix and our lovely Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Jenkins. And so again, as Superintendent has stated, this is our part 3 of a 4-part series. Again, we're focusing on how do we start funding all of the plans that we have identified to help accommodate all the continued growth and need that the school district has. And to that end, we are going to limit our discussion to 4 main capital funding revenue sources. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other funding sources, but for the purposes of this presentation, we'll limit it to just the 4 most common and most the ones we utilize the most. And they are in order in our agenda here, also in terms of their amount. Our largest funding source being the discretionary local millage tax, rounded out by our capital outlay and debt service. It also just happens to work out that it is also in alignment of how flexible each funding source is, with the LCI, or discretionary local tax, being one of our most flexible funding sources, with our capital outlay and debt service source being one of the most restrictive, and I'll get into it a little bit later. So our first funding source that we'll cover this afternoon is the discretionary local millage tax, aka 1.5 mil, aka LCI. This funding source stems from the non-exempt property taxes and home evaluations for properties within Polk County. So it was established under Florida State Statute 1011.7, as well as in the Florida Constitution. Some special requirements of this funding source to keep in mind when we go to start identifying how we're going to fund certain projects is that this funding source is aimed more towards maintaining our existing facilities. Is how do we keep them operational and keep them functional? They also have to, these projects have to also be in alignment with our TRIM ad, our Truth and Millage ads, which pretty much is a list of how the school district proposes to use the 1.5 mil funding source to fund certain projects. That's what gives it that flexibility of, hey, these are the kinds of projects we can use for this funding source. So examples of those funding projects: your day-to-day maintenance operations, patching walls, road repair in a parking lot, renovation projects, if we need to reconfigure classrooms or office spaces, our day-to-day repairs, our school bus fleet, purchasing of our yellow fleet and white fleet, As well, this funding source can also be used towards paying back debt service of issued bonds that the district has. Now, what is restricted? What can we not be using this funding source for? It cannot be used for instructional or teaching materials, or in general, those expendable items, things that are going to get used. Your office supplies, your art supplies, and toys, etc. Those are things you cannot use this funding source for. And lastly, some recent changes that have come out of the Florida State statute that really impacts this funding source. Last year, the legislature put in and passed a bill that allows that charter schools are now eligible to receive some of this funding. Last year, they went into law under Florida Statute 1013.62, and it is a phased-in approach that charter schools, to include conversion charter schools, are also eligible, or they are going to be receiving through a formula and calculation that they are also going to be receiving some of this funding source as well. But again, it is a phased-in approach. This first year is our first year going into it, and it's going to be phased in at a 20% this year, and the next year 40, 60, 80, and 100%. And that percentage is based off of the formula that is used to determine how much funding that specific charter school gets. So it's not to be interpreted as they're getting 20% of our entire LCI funding. No, it's how that their calculation is determined.
If I may, it's also important to note that this also included, based off the legislature, it's a 5-year ramp up, if that wasn't mentioned, that they get 20% a year compounding until they finally reach that 100%. So just so you're aware of that. And we are now going into year 2. So this last school year, they received 20% of their eligible funds.
And so this next slide here provides some of the information here in terms of how much LCI has the district received in the past, and that's our that top graph in the upper right-hand corner. Back in 2018, the district received just over $55 million in LCI, and ending at last year in 22, coming in just over $86 million. Now, in terms of projections, these are again based off of our most educated projections here. But next year, we're looking at coming in just over $100 million in LCI funding. But again, these are projections and are subject to change because this funding source, remember, is tied to non-exempt property valuations. So, and to highlight some of these projects that are funded through LCI, as I mentioned, through some of the permitted uses, day-to-day maintenance operations, portables, that comes in at $17 million. Deferred maintenance, it's been a big priority for the superintendent and for the district, coming in just under $10 million. Debt service, your insurance, tech, and equipment. And that's what was funded under the 22-23 year. And moving into next year, again, those figures are pretty much staying in alignment for what we are thinking about for next year. Moving on to our next funding source, the half-cent sales tax. Some of you are very familiar with this. We actually have one of our sales tax members in the audience, Reverend Mincy, is actually in the audience as well. So this funding source, again, is funded through our local sales tax dollars. This was a referendum in which the citizens of Polk County, this went out as a referendum, as an additional tax that the residents of Polk County agreed to take on in order to fund certain projects that were laid out in that referendum. As a part of that referendum, that comes with a special requirement of what and how these funds can specifically be used for. So again, we're talking into our LCI was really flexible in what projects it could be used to. Now we're starting to get a little bit more narrow focused. And the possible uses for this funding source include all the gymnasium additions that have been added to the middle schools. Maintenance, again, and improvements can also be funded through this. Land acquisition can also be funded through our sales tax dollars. Improvements to sites, design and engineering work. This funding source can also be used for new schools or added capacity. It can be used that way, but we have another funding source, which we'll get to next, that can also do the same thing. So it's being very disciplined and calculated as to what pot of money are we using to fund certain projects and how. But again, it is a possibility. And again, sales tax in terms of it can be also used to pay back in debt service of issued bonds. Now, what is restricted? Pretty much any of those items that fall outside of the purview of that referendum. And I didn't mention it on our last slide, but for sales tax at least, our sales tax dollar revenue source accounts for just under 33% of all of our capital funding. Our LCI dollars accounted for just under 44%. So again, this is a large chunk of our capital funding source. In terms of past sales tax revenue dollars, again, in 2018, it came in just over $27 million. This past year, we finished the fiscal year at just over $77 million. In terms of projections, we're still looking to be consistent and again, taking in just under $78 million for the 23-24 year, ending in 27-28 at just over $81 million. In terms of our examples of projects that we've used this funding source to fund include the Albert modernization, that portion of the school that is just being modernized, not the added capacity portion of it, because that school is also being enlarged to accommodate additional students, but just the modernization part. Additions and remodeling, gymnasiums, as well as our deferred maintenance. Our first year at implementing our deferred maintenance, again, it was a small, it was our first step into trying to ramp up our deferred maintenance program. So again, that first year was at $4.5 million, but moving forward, as you can see in the next year, it's ramping up to just over $7.5 million. And again, other projects that are on the horizon are the modernizations for Alta Vista and Juanita, as well as additional gymnasiums. They're on the schedule as well. Impact fees. So again, impact fees really stem, again, I'm not going to regurgitate the statutes, but our impact fees are really, again, we're getting more narrowly focused in how these funds can be used. But where these funds come from, they are coming specifically from new residential growth. We're not talking about commercial growth or non-residential uses, because the intent and focus of impact fees are to fund additional capacity to accommodate the growth that the county continues to experience, new growth from residential growth. Some special requirements. With impact fees, they're governed by an ordinance that lays out specifically how these funds can be used for. Now, impact fees, the ordinance has to be reviewed and redone every 4 years. And we are currently in the process of working with Board of County Commissioners right now on their updated review of those studies and figures right now. And even after the end of that study, once they determine the true cost of construction at the elementary, middle, and high school level, there's still a caveat that says you can only increase your educational impact fees so much. So an example of that would be, okay, if our current, just for easy math, impact fee for an educational impact fee is $1,000 for a home, but through the process of the impact fee study, it says, well, actually, based off your cost of construction in the market, it's closer to $5,000. But there's a state statute that limits how much you can increase your impact fee during that study. So we could only, at most, go from $1,000 to $1,500. So, again, it's limited into how much it could increase over time. And again, Polk County, along with other jurisdictions, they have implemented tools to where it's a phased-in approach, so it's not a massive impact to the development community all at once, and it gets phased in over subsequent years. So in terms of our prior impact fees, so this graph up in the top right-hand corner seems like a roller coaster ride, but that is because our impact fee dollars, they are not automatically dispersed to the school district. The school district has to approach the Board of County Commissioners and request these dollars. So that graph on the top represents the requests that have been made in the prior years. And it doesn't highlight our most recent request from the Board of County Commissioners of the impact fees to the tune of $174 million. But again, emphasize, the request that have been made in the prior years. And it doesn't highlight our most recent request from the Board of County Commissioners of the impact fees to the tune of $174 million. But again, emphasize, the request that have been made in the prior years. And it doesn't highlight our most recent request from the Board of County Commissioners of the impact fees to the tune of $174 million. But again, emphasize, The impact fee dollars are going towards new added capacity for our school district to accommodate all of the influx and massive growth that the county continues to experience here. In terms of our projections, this funding source, much like our sales tax funding source, is really tied to the local economy. Our impact fee dollars they go hand in hand with the growth that is occurring in our county, the residential growth. So this is very subject to change. If something drastic happens to the development community in which residential growth all of a sudden stops, whether it's through a pandemic or through a financial housing market crisis, the impact fees will drop as a result, because again, if we are in the middle of a financial crisis, there's not going to be that many more homes being built as fast as they are right now. So again, our projections were conservative, but again, this is closely tied to the growth, the economic growth in the county. In terms of examples of projects, we can use impact fee dollars to fund debt service and paying back of bonds, as well as the added student capacity for Elbert Elementary. And we've continued to plan for, and we started to build up the budget, if you will, for a new high school. We've already started that process last year, and we started setting aside money to go ahead and start building up that funding source for that. Moving into this year, again, we're adding additional funding to start planning for that huge cost of a high school, because those are very expensive. So it takes years to build up. If we want to pay, or if we want to take the option of not going out for a bond, it takes years to build up that flow of money to account for those large expenditures. So again, in addition to the new high school, the added student stations for Alta Vista and Juanita are examples of where those impact fee dollars can go towards. And last but not least, our impact fee dollars account for just under 22% of our capital funding sources. Moving on to capital outlay and debt service, this is our smallest funding source, and it is our most restrictive funding source in terms of how it can be used. But its funding source comes from the Motor Vehicle License Tax Revenue Department. All school districts receive a small portion of that funding revenue from across the state. Special requirements: projects have to be listed in a district's five-year educational plan, meaning those are certain life cycle items at school districts that have to be annotated in order to be eligible to use this funding source. So possible uses, it could be, to enlarge or furnish or equip, maintain, renovate, or repair certain school facilities. So again, this is our smallest funding source, and it is our most restrictive funding source. In closing, again, I thank you for this time to bring what I hope is informative to the board, to help give you an idea as to, in terms of all of the capital planning, how it all fits together. And again, to put it in perspective, again, our LCI funding source is our largest funding source, with capital outlay and debt service being our smallest. And with that, I will stand by for questions.
Josh, one of the things that board members have requested of me, that you and I discussed, was their ability to be able to go into the system and sort their capital projects within their districts. Could you walk them through that?
And so I'm still working on getting that updated feature into the dashboard. I will email the superintendent as soon as that comes online, but that'll be online before the end of the week. And again, if you haven't visited the dashboard website, I highly encourage you to. I will send out that link again. But it gives you an idea as to all the projects that the districts are currently involved in terms of the capital projects, where the project stands in its phase of development, how is it being funded, and we'll be adding that feature of what district it falls within.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Miller?
Thanks, Mr. McLemore. I think this was a great presentation for people who may be watching who don't understand how our funding piece works. I'm going to save it. I know I'm going to save it so I can share it with others. I was one that was asking for that feature just because the growth I'm seeing, especially in the Auburndale area, and I know we have things in the works, and I also know how that can change. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. We have a 5-year plan, but it's not a solid document. It's fluid and it may change. And I appreciate that. So I'll be looking forward to that and asking questions if I have any, but I just think having access to that will help me be a better representative to the community on what our upcoming projects will be. Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I agree with Lisa. This has been an incredible presentation and so helpful to be able to put the numbers with just the percentage of where that money comes from. The dashboard that you're talking about, and if you could send out the link, that would be great. I know historically we were provided with a document that goes back a little ways. How far does the dashboard go back for projects, or is it just current projects?
I've gone back and, let's say, the data I have on it goes back to 2023.
Okay.
And even then, 2021, because it still contains Mulberry Senior High School's modernization. But it'll be just listed as a closed-out project. But that's about as far back in terms of projects that I have listed up there.
Okay. Yeah, that is helpful to go back, I think, a little ways, just because so often we hear, it's always, well, what have you done for me lately? So to be able to go to show, looking at Winter Haven, these are all of the projects that have happened in Winter Haven over the past 5 years, because a lot of them are not, if it's not the big flashy new school, it's not something that we typically consider to be an investment, even though chillers and AC units and roofs and all of those things are a huge investment. So being able to pull up and, this is what's actually been invested in the schools right here in your community over the past few years is really helpful. So I think keeping them on the dashboard as they close out will be a great tool as well. Thank you.
Mr. Sharpless?
Have a couple questions. First, on the dashboard, both questions are mostly dealing with the dashboard. Will it show a percentage breakdown on how each project's funded? So say this was like a 25% from, the sales tax versus the impact fee, whatever.
I don't believe it's broken out in percentages, but it is broken out in terms of dollars.
Okay.
We can add that, we can add that feature. Yeah.
Okay, that's my first question. That'd be helpful. And the second one is, the dashboard, is it restricted to us, a district, or is this something that we're going to be able to promote to the general public?
It is public facing. It is open and viewable to everybody.
Okay.
And it's definitely a tool that we use to help collaborate and conduct joint planning with the county and the cities, especially in terms of some of their capital projects or roadway projects or utility projects. They already get a glimpse as to what is on our horizon.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Bridges?
Thank you, sir. Josh, I'm just curious. We had the discussion about impact fees, and historically, that has usually been in association with a discussion of school concurrency. I didn't hear that word used. Is that a word that's fallen out of favor?
No, sir, and not meant to be excluded from the presentation.
Okay, I was just curious.
In working with the consulting firm with the county, they do review our student data, our growth trends, our past projects, and the cost of those projects. So,
Thanks.
But they're definitely used.
I was just curious, because usually that's a term that comes up frequently, and
Yes.
thank you.
Josh, there's no further questions or comments. Thank you, sir. Board members, I'd like to bring up Ms. Amato, and she will provide an update on Language and Literacy Academy for Learning.
Good afternoon. I apologize. I missed my first call. I was watching it live, but it was obviously extremely delayed. So good afternoon. You do have a contract modification. It is just simply changing the address for language and literacy for this upcoming school year. They're seeking a one-year relocation while they are in the process of purchasing their new building. They will be located, their students will be housed in two separate locations, one in Winter Haven, the Church of the Tabernacle, which is over by Inwood. That'll be for their middle and high school students. Their elementary students will be right here in Bartow at the church off Jackson Street, Main Street area. And then they will also have a third location, which will serve as their corporate office. And that'll be located on Central Avenue in Winter Haven.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. Is it usual for charter schools to
operate with their admin building being so far away from some of the sites?
So not typically, but they do have 2 assistant principals that one will be housed on each of the campuses where the students are located. I believe they're going to use the corporate office location really for their IEP meetings and their meetings so that it's more centrally located for the families to come for those meetings.
Okay, thank you.
They have added security, so they have a security officer at each site.
Correct.
Ms. Miller?
That was my question about security features at both sites for parents who may be asking. And I'm assuming that your office is keeping up with the requirements. I've not seen this before, but I have great trust in your guidance.
Thanks.
For our schools that have these situations. I just want to make sure that the security is being doubled at each.
Yes, they actually currently already have 2 securities
Okay.
on their one location. So they will obviously put 1 security at each of the locations. They are seeking to hire a substitute on the off chance one of those call in. They also have been working collaboratively with Lieutenant Lanier, Captain Shea, and Sergeant Blaine Elliott in regards to walking the campus and in seeing what else they need to ensure they are in compliance with Raptor and fencing and cameras and all of the other components needed.
And being a school for students, not all of them, actually, I think now they're serving all students. But at one point, they were a school just for students with developmental or with disabilities. To duplicate that programming on both campuses and be ADA accommodations and all of that, we're helping support the needs for them to understand how great of for 1 year, that's a great expense to make sure it's equitable.
Absolutely. And so how their lease is written will depend on how the church, what the churches and the landlords allow them to do to meet those requirements and modifications.
Thank you.
I would like to clarify, though, that safety and security is not a function of Ms. Amato's office.
Right.
That would be done through Safe Schools. So I just want to make sure anybody else listening doesn't get the perception that Ms. Amato is the one that comes in and evaluates the school safety and whether or not they've met statutory requirements. So thank you for pointing out that our Office of Safe Schools is the one who would do that with them, because you have enough on your plate versus having to now be the security officer for all of our charter schools.
Thank you.
So thank you. Ms. Wyatt?
And the Safe Schools has or has not visited these sites yet?
My last communication with Dr. Callens is they would be touring them in the next coming weeks. So I'm assuming it is on the books.
Okay, and they will be touring them and giving them either, my concern is if Safe Schools goes in and says, hey, this just isn't going to work.
I believe they did a preliminary tour, and there were just some things that needed to be done once the leases were signed and secured.
So it's just the approval.
Yeah.
And then as far as staffing beyond security, this is one that's come before us before because they oftentimes will have one teacher teaching multiple preps. I know keeping I'm assuming it's a high school and middle, high, and elementary split. Are there any concerns with the staffing and being at 2 different locations as far as guidance counselors, LEAs, those types of positions?
I don't believe there will be. They only have one guidance, 2 LEAs, which is one serves elementary, one serves secondary. So they kind of already have some of those components based on our recommendations from the renewal. They did heed some of those and make those corrections based on our recommendations. So I did inquire about their therapies to ensure that the students are getting the therapies, and the therapist will create a session that allows them to rotate between both of the campuses to ensure the students are in compliance.
Thank you.
There are no further questions or comments. Thank you, Ms. Amato. I'll try and tee it up a little bit better next time. Next, we have Don Robertson and Andy Baldwin here. This is for another grant that we're applying for to help support mental health services. I'll try not to steal all your thunder, so I'll be quiet now.
Thank you. Hello again. This item is to inform the board about an opportunity for us to apply for the school-based mental health services grant program. This grant program is a federal grant that we would apply for. Total estimated funding for the entire nation is $19 million. We're not requesting quite the entire pot of money, so we'll have a little bit better chance of getting it probably. The purpose of the grant is to increase mental health support for children and youth in our schools. The project period, the application was actually due on May 31st, so we have applied for the grant. If we are awarded the grant, it'll be for a 5-year, 60-month program, and the average size of the award is $1.7 million. We're actually requesting a little bit more than that average size, just because we are a large district, so we anticipate that our needs are going to be a little bit more than some of the other school districts. Our application is in three main parts, focusing on recruitment, retention, and respecialization for our mental health staff. For the recruitment aspect, we're going to try to add one mental health counselor for each of the 5 years. So at the end of the 5 years, we'll have a total of 5 additional mental health counselors who will be placed at school locations who have a higher number of incidents based on the school environmental safety incident reporting system. And the next topic is retention of our current staff. So we want to make sure that we hold on to our current mental health staff. So we're proposing $500 stipends for our school psychologists, school social workers, mental health facilitators, and mental health counselors. That's not school counselors. I want to differentiate between school counselors and mental health counselors. So those are two different groups. This would focus on the mental health counselors, not the school counselors. We would also like to look at respecialization. So that's, we have current people who have bachelor's degrees who are in teaching positions who may be interested in a career in mental health services. So we may be able to provide some tuition assistance for cohorts of people to get master's degrees in school counseling or mental health counseling, or PhDs in school psychology as well, and provide tuition support throughout the period of the grant program to get people respecialized. And then also providing a paid internship program for some of our mental health positions.
Ms. Miller?
Thanks for presenting today. And I know we've had conversation, and your department as well is doing things that it takes me a minute to even comprehend the depth of all of those grants and federal grants, keeping up with those. I am glad to hear that we are offering, or possibly will offer with this grant, an opportunity for our current staff to continue education, to go into the mental health arena. I know just talking to people in post-secondary, that's not something we're seeing a lot of people doing right now, but the need is so great. And there's a few teachers that have interest in it that I've talked to, who are long-term teachers, but at the end of their careers, they really want to make an impact with students maybe in a different way. So I think this will be great. I don't know how you do that and we've done this with other grants where we offer them opportunities for training, and how that's disseminated the information, because 13,000 people, it's sometimes hard for everyone to get that. So I'd be interested when this happens, because we're going to speak in positive that we're getting all of this money. I would like to be notified of how we're going to offer this to our staff members. But thanks again for allowing this opportunity for us to understand, and the community that's listening, on how we are trying to meet the needs of our mental health, our students with mental health issues, or, continuing what we're already doing, because funding is limited, and this will give us more of those opportunities. Thank you.
There are no further questions or comments. Thank you both very much. Board members, last items on the workshop here for discussion and presentation is the new high school update. So just to go ahead and give you the most recent update, you'll get additional information in the near future. We received 2 final submissions, one from Building Tomorrow Schools and the second one from Fortress Secured LLC. The Phase 1 evaluation was completed. The evaluation committee reviewed each proposal and noted that both proposals were deemed responsive, meaning that all the items that were required in the IT end, they were compliant with and responsive to. That included their statement of qualifications, public entity crime statement, Form SF 305, general liability insurance, and equal employment opportunity plan. This now enters into Phase 2. This phase includes our due diligence reviews of the proposals, and will include additional questions, interviews, and meetings to work directly with our district staff to develop specific designs that incorporate the specific needs for each of these, for this high school campus. This includes the specificity of the academic programs to be offered, especially those that are academy, career-based, or workforce development. The security requirements, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, additional amenities, and with these two, we will work with these 2 entities to work towards a best and final, or what's called a BAFO, final offer from each group. The purpose of Phase 1 was only to develop a short list of vendors to recommend moving into Phase 2. We will provide an updated timeline once the team begins scheduling meetings to support Phase 2. Then ultimately, the board will be faced with making a decision between the 2 final entities. We'll outline for you the merits that we find in both, the pros and cons. Cost alone is not always a final indicator. As many of you know, it's really about who's going to most efficiently and effectively meet the demand requirements and other requirements that our team, SREF standards, and others specify. So that is your high school update. I don't know, Ms. Miller, if that's a holdover from the last one or.
I'm trying to punch my.
Mr. Sharpless.
I was just wondering how long phase 2 normally takes in this, or is this the first time we went through this process, so we don't know exactly?
It's not,
Okay.
because we've done this with others when we've advertised similar projects. This is basically now on track with it's going to mirror our previous process where we identify the total number of classrooms, academic spaces, specificity of program needs. It could take 30 days. It could take 120 days. It really depends on how the team feels as far as how responsive the two submitting entities are to being in their ability to address our questions and our needs. So it'll move as quickly or as slowly as needed to make sure that we can bring you a recommendation that we feel confident in.
So but like you said, it's very similar to previous ones we've done. It's the same process.
Phase 2 follows similar processes that we've utilized in the past. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you. I don't know what was wrong with that screen.
Well, you were still listed, so I don't think
No.
it lets you double click. Sorry.
Very interested in our topics today, Superintendent Hyde.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, just so I have a better understanding when and the public does as well. So we're going to look at this just from the building side, not the finance piece. That will come separately once we approve. That was my first, it'll be together.
They come together.
And then my second question is, will there be a recommendation from staff, like in the past, on these these projects?
We will outline the pros and cons, and yes, ma'am, we will provide you with what we believe to be the best project option.
Thank you.
However, that does not prohibit the board from determining that they would like to go in a different direction.
Oh, it never has. Thank you.
Don't mind asking. Don't mind asking me.
No, but I didn't know you were going to give us a recommendation.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the superintendent's reports for the workshop. The other items listed here are traditional items with their informational only. And so I turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board members, I hope you're ready to do our next item, which is basically to go through our agenda for this evening's meeting. Then from there, I know we had some concerns brought forward as well, and that would be a good opportunity to bring that forward for us to discuss as well. So at this point, let's start with the agenda. And then I'd like to also hear any committee or liaison updates, if you have those as well. All right, so for tonight's agenda, we're going to go just from the top to bottom, so A through C as typical. You know those and what's to be expected for those. So then from there, I'm going to start with D through H. So D through H, if you have any comments, questions on that section, those sections. All right, and then sections I through J. And K through L. And then sections M through O. If you have anything on those sections, that's the consent. All right, I see no comments. And then we'll move down to the action agenda for tonight.
Wait, I do have something on the previous one.
Okay.
I just need to know on 018, since I'm an employee of Warner University, should I, what I should do there, if I should recuse myself?
That's the dual enrollment articulation agreement, Mr. Bridges.
It does not appear to me that would result in a special financial gain or loss to yourself.
Okay, just making sure.
So long as it does not result in a special financial gain or loss to you or your family, you're good to vote
Okay, thank you.
and required to do so.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Sharpless. So now we're down to section P. This is our action agenda for tonight. Any comments on the action agenda? you have another one? All right, Mr. Sharpless, you're recognized.
On P5, I would like to read my letter for the naming of South Point Elementary Media Center in honor of Effie Sensabaugh into record at that time.
All right, very good. Do you know if the principal's going to be with us tonight?
I do
You
not know.
Okay, or family, anything like that? All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Sharpless. Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
That was going to be my question, is do we know if Nancy or if any of the group is coming, or can we find out if they'll be in the room? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. When it comes to our policy updates, we are bringing these forward as a big block, and obviously we've done a lot of work on these with our special work session and then our public hearing. Just expect me to read the numbers of the policy and the names, but we are going to be voting on those in a block, just so you know. All right, so that's for, all right, Mr. Sharpless, you're recognized.
If there's just grammatical typos and things like that in the policies, those can just be addressed, correct? They don't have to like go through a policy, a Scribner error. We can just do that, right? Okay, just making sure.
That is correct, but make sure you point them out.
Okay. Does that happen to happen at a meeting, or can I just tell somebody?
Either way, but
Okay.
they need to be aware of what they are, so.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so you're going to bring those forward tonight? Maybe.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
It's just,
All right, and then we have section Q, which is our public hearing. Again, these are non-voted for tonight. And again, I'll read the numbers of those policies and names. And if you have any questions, concerns on those in a non-voting, just bring those forward at that time. So then we have a superintendent's report. All right, and Mr. Bridges, looks like you'll have something for us as well. Okay, and I do see Miss Matthews, good to see you. I don't know if you have anything for us tonight? I do not. All right, very good. I think actually the most recent audit report came to us this morning, so that's actually a total of 6 audit reports from Miss Matthews that you've received since our last meeting, I believe. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll note those tonight as well. And then we'll wrap with our comments and public comments. All right, at this point, any committee or liaison updates that you would like to bring before the board? All right, Mr. Sharpless, go ahead.
okay, so make sure, am I on? I don't think I'm on. There we go. Last week, I went to the Florida School Board Association's summer conference, and there were some really good things that I've learned there, things that I want to bring back, let you all know. I don't know if I'm going to steal your thunder here a little bit, Board Chair Allen, but both Board Chair Allen and I have been appointed to committee chairs within Florida School Board Association. I'm the Leadership Services Chair, and Dr. Allen is the Federal Relations Subcommittee Chair. So working with through the Florida School Board Association, working at our federal level for legislation, and me working with the Florida School Board Association with Leadership Services. So one of those things that Leadership Services Committee is tasked with is regulating the certified board program, master board training, and that's just something that I want to just put in the ear of my fellow board members. Maybe, after this next election, I think it would behoove us as a board to go through master board training. I think the last time master board training happened, only 2 of our current board members were sitting board members. So I think it would be good for us to be able, I think it would just help with our working together as a board. Not that we have a dysfunctional board by any means, but we can always get better. That's the first thing I want to say. One speaker which I thought this was impressive. One speaker was talking about having a tip jar culture. And so he was someone who does dueling pianos. If you know anything about dueling pianos, they have, you can go up with requests, along with the request, you have put a little cash in there, and then it's a tip, and they generally play your songs. But it was about customer service orientation. And so 3 questions that he challenged us to ask the employees within our district, and it's something just to keep in the back of our minds, is why do you work here? The second one is what would you like to do more of in your current role? And the last one is what keeps you coming back for more? And so those are 3 things that I would challenge. I know we have a lot of the cabinet here and other people who work directly with our employees. Those are kind of questions we need to be asking to understand the temperature and climate of our organization. There's also a lot of suggestions I got from other districts around the state, specifically medium and large-sized districts that I've shared with Superintendent Hyde, in fact, in a meeting today. And so there's some things that I think, it just shows the value of the organization. To me, there's 2 big keys for my participation in FSBA. One of those is networking, so I can bounce ideas. We're bound by sunshine law up here, right? So, I'm not bound by sunshine law with other boards and other districts because we don't work directly with them. So by bouncing ideas and also professional development, I learned some great statistics that really, made it somber for me in dealing with our students. In 2021, let me just give you an example of one. 18% of students nationwide made a suicide plan. That was something when I read that in one of our trainings, it just really, wow. We just got, our students are struggling. And so that was something that came about. Also, they talked about onboarding our new board members. And so I know of course, there's qualifying this week for school board, but as of right now, I know we'll have at least 1 new school board member come November. And we're going to, I got a great document here on some how to onboard potentially, and that's something board chair that, I believe in our policies, that would come to me and you, right, to help onboard, separate because of sunshine, of course, but, something that you may want, I might share those resources with you. Yeah. Something that's interesting. And the last thing, and I'll stop, there was something that I found interesting. It's called Buy Board, and it was something that, it's a national, I can't think of the word I'm looking for here, but it's basically helps with efficiency and cost savings when we're buying materials. And it's something, Superintendent, I forgot to mention to you in our meeting earlier, but it's something that, when you talk about procurement, money we can save is a good thing. So we might want to consider that kind of stuff. So anyhow, great educational time at Florida School Board Association. As a representative here from our district, learned a lot, and look forward to bringing that knowledge back to our district. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharpless. And again, appreciate you for stepping in for me to serve as part of the Board of Directors meeting during that meeting as well as I was traveling. And definitely very exciting to see Polk noted to fill these leadership roles in a big capacity with the Florida School Board Association. So thank you for the work that you're doing there. Ms. Miller, you're recognized.
I have an update. I just want to add that there are more board members that had done some training and towards that goal of being certified. And I appreciate the service. First, I want to start out and say I appreciate the service of both of you on committees for the Florida School Board Association. And when we have new board members, or if we have anyone joining the board, I think we should have that conversation. But I also think in that conversation, we should include the cost of not only Florida School Board, not only our membership to FSBA as a whole, but what it costs to go through that training, and maybe compare it to local costs, just so we are doing the service of letting the public know of how we're investing dollars. We've done a lot. In the past, we've had team building and leadership building things come in, and I think it's important for the public to see that we are working to create a stronger team and what that cost associated is. What I have for you today is everyone got a gift. Get out your gifts. So I sit on the Policy Council with Head Start and the group that was here earlier. The gifts you have are from Baycare. Kimberly Lewis, May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and Kimberly Lewis is with Baycare. And like Mr. Sharple has said, mental health is one of our biggest areas of concern with students and with adults. But these are just sensory things that can help remind people. I chose this one from Ms. Fields, Strong, Smart, and Fearless, because I think we all agree that's probably a great one for her. But our students, this was to remind parents as well, and the parent council, of how, your life is a journey, and sometimes it's difficult. And a lot of those families with pre-K kids, times are hard right now. And so I appreciate Baycare. If you don't know, I was going to let the community know of a service. They have one in Winter Haven, and it's free of charge. You totally can go there for if you need a break. If you have someone, it doesn't matter their age, elderly or young adult, because it's during the day when they're maybe not in school. But if you look up Baycare's website in Winter Haven, it'll give you the address, and it's a meeting room where they have activities. They have people you can talk to. There is an outlet, and it's free of charge. And they want to help people. They want to reduce Baker Acts, and they're doing that with this program. And it's all funded through Baycare, and they're not charging the community. So I think it's a great service, and I appreciate Baycare being part of the Policy Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. All right, Ms. Wyatt, you are recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Miller giving us all stress balls before a long meeting with her today. But you're welcome. And this is a little off the topic of our liaison reports, but I did just want to bring up that we received notice from Mr. Bridges this week that he will be retiring, which congratulations, because that is very exciting. I know that you, I think, have been getting a little bit of pressure from your better half to join her in this experience, which so very exciting. September 30th, though, would be your last day, which, as we're looking at the calendar, we only meet once a month during the summer, so our next board meeting is not until July 23rd. Personally, I think July 23rd may be a little behind the ball to get somebody in here. I mean, obviously, ideal would be to get somebody in here with at least a little bit of overlap, I would think, because Mr. Bridges has been here a long time and has quite a great deal of just institutional knowledge that I don't know that you could even scratch the surface of some of that in a week or two of overlap, but at least to have a little bit of a transition period. So I just wanted to bring that conversation up today to see if there was any interest in maybe doing a special board meeting, or how we can get this advertised as soon as possible, so that we can get someone in as soon as possible. I'm assuming that it would be a similar process as to when we went through our hiring of our administrative assistant, in that we would have to do open interviews because it would have to be in the sunshine, which would likely need to be scheduled sometime in August, I would think. But I just want to make sure that we're looking at the timeline as we're transitioning.
Great, thank you, Ms. Wyatt. And yeah, I really appreciate your email to us, Mr. Bridges. 26 years, so I really appreciate your service and the depth. You, as a very cultured, so even the subject line, sail into the sunset, right? Really appreciate your service to us and your general counsel to the board as a whole. I don't know if there's a moment for you to speak to this. It would be great now.
It's hard to speak to. I've been in the seat for a long time. And, I have served with 8 superintendents and a whole bunch of school board members, as I put in the letter. Some of them now have their names on the sides of buildings. It's been a good run, good people, good friends here at the district that I intend to keep in my heart and in touch with forever. But as Sarah Beth mentioned, my other half retired from the district 3 years ago. She had attempted to persuade me to retire last year, and I out passive aggressived her. I guess that may be a word. But this year she presented me with a non-refundable ticket for a 5-week cruise in Europe and Africa toward the end of September and said, I'm sticking a pin in it. So with her encouragement and support, yes, I'll plan on retiring at the end of September. And I will be happy to work with you to smooth the transition. I've already let some of the officers in the Florida School Board Attorneys Association know. And I'll be happy to coordinate the collection of job descriptions from other districts, whatever I can do to assist in that. I also spoke with John Murphy at the law firm of Boswell and Dunlap. Believe it or not, 26 years ago when I came on board, John was a baby lawyer at Boswell and Dunlap, and he served as assistant school board attorney during the transition. He was never an employee, but he served in that position between the exit of Steve Self, who was nominated to the bench, and the time that I was hired. And I've asked him if he would be willing to assume the same role, and he assured me that he and his partners would be happy to support that transition. So you'll always have someone around who's got a depth of school board experience and knows where the goats are tied, as Bob Boswell used to say. So anything I can do to help, I love you all. I appreciate every last one of you, all the people here at the district and in the schools that have been so encouraging through the years. That has been my joy. And last, I would say that I hope that on a daily basis, my office has always left people with a sense of kindness and receptiveness, and I've always tried to remind my folks and to remind myself that whoever's on the other end of that phone is dealing with things that I have no idea of. And I always try to remember to be kind.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Bridges, thank you. And your letter documented that work and the great work in your office and the kindness displayed by your counterparts. So thank you so much for your service.
My pleasure.
Superintendent, I appreciate you sending the job description to us, so everybody has that in your email as well. There's, Ms. Wyatt brought forward maybe the potential of a special work session on this. I'm not sure how you feel about the timeline. If July is too far out as far as our meeting schedule, but we'll keep going here. Mr. Nolte, you are recognized.
Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you, Wes, for all your great years of service here. You're super gentleman. I wish you the best in the future. Hope you have a safe cruise. I attended the half-cent sales tax oversight committee meeting this past week, and the sales tax committee was presented with the newest member that Dr. Allen appointed, Brian Stevens, to the sales tax committee. Brian gave a brief overview of his qualifications and insight, and it looks like we've got several other people that'll be coming in, and that was about it. We had a good meeting and saw what was being spent, the public's money was being spent on, and where it's going to go down in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Nolte, thank you so much. All right, any other board members? Feedback, comment? Superintendent Hyde, do you have any recommendations? As far as the timeline?
No, I don't have any names for you. I did forward to the board the existing job description. Each time we've had an opportunity, I think it's important for you to first review that and determine whether or not that job description accurately fits what you expect from a board attorney. Each of you is very well connected through FSBA and other organizations, so you have the ability to reach out to other school districts. I believe I was able during the meeting to send you 4, if not 5, additional job descriptions from other counties. Mr. Bridges can help you with the remainders. Again, and I'm not in any way trying to inject myself in this, but I do want to ensure that the board has a timeline, and I don't believe the board can advertise the vacancy until you have affirmed your job description. And so I really will defer a lot more of this to Mr. Warren through HR and to Mr. Bridges and Mr. Murphy, who probably are going to give you the best counsel, because to Ms. Wyatt's point, It is a complicated process simply because it has to be done in the open. It's not a traditional job interview where it can be done, with a committee behind closed doors. Everything has to be done in the sunshine. And that's not a problem per se. It's just it complicates the timeline for each of you. Summers are busy. The start of the school year is incredibly busy for all of you as well. So trying to find times where you can meet. I think if the board does not necessarily need a meeting to edit and make suggestions to the current job description, you would need a meeting to affirm the changes, and then we could advertise it based off your direction. You'll note that when I sent you the job description, I said if you're going to make any changes, please let us know, and we'll bring it back to back. I mean, there's no reason. It's just a job description. We can address it, and the board can vote on it in the same meeting, and then we can work with Mr. Bridges to develop a timeline for advertisement. We do, much to Mr. Bridges' point, Mr. Murphy has served this board since I've been here over the 3 years, when Mr. Bridges has not been available due to vacations or other issues, and he's served you very well, and he's very knowledgeable. So you do have that buffer. I would encourage the board to take time to find the right fit, and I think we're going to have to advertise this very broadly as well. And again, I'm trying to be respectful in this project. I'll offer my suggestions, but it's an awkward one for me because Mr. Bridges and I talk about this like we don't report to each other, we report to you. So it's awkward for me to feel like I'm offering suggestions, and so if it's unwelcome or unwarranted, then please tell me not to do so any longer. But I think that's what I would offer to you. If the board does feel like a job description needs to be revised, it's not difficult for you to call a meeting early July, because you are 6 weeks out from your next meeting. If that timeline is of a concern, just pointing out that you are 6 weeks out from your next meeting. So Ms. Vega could survey the board to determine what dates and times would be available if need be, and she could work with Mr. Bridges to make sure everything's above board.
All right, board members, this is the will of the board, so I would like to hear some feedback if you guys find this as a necessity. So Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
Thank you. And thank you, Superintendent Hyde, for providing the additional job descriptions that you did. Looking at our job description, it has not been updated since 2012. And I don't know how much of that was substantial in the sense of the things that you do in the job description. And my guess would be that it was probably more either a salary level or more technical items, not necessarily in the meat of it. I would love, as one board member, for Mr. Bridges to take a look at it and say, are these still things that you actually do on a daily basis? Are there more things that should be added to the list? I don't want to pretend that any one of the 7 of us truly know what you do every single day and what things are we, while we know obviously the very high level, but are there things that are missing, whether it's meetings with different groups or different processes that have likely, many of them changed statutorily since 2012. So if you wouldn't mind taking a look at it, I think I would appreciate that. But I would encourage us to look at maybe meeting either last week of June or the week after the 4th, just to try and get it advertised as soon as possible. But I did want to ask a couple questions as far as scheduling because obviously any interviews would have to be open to the public. How far out do we have to have those noticed?
I don't think there's a difference between those and any other meeting at the school board.
Okay, so just
So as long as we got an adequate notice in there.
okay, so just the one
It'd be like calling a special.
1 week. Okay. And then the other question I would have is as far as staffing for, obviously, anytime we meet, it takes many people to do that. Looking at him departing September 30th, are there any time frames, like first week of school or anything like that staff would not be available for us to be able to do the interviews, or that it would be tougher to pull people?
You'd have to, the fact that you haven't done this in almost 30 years raises the question, who would be on the interview committee? Because staff would not necessarily have a presence on that interview committee. Whether or not Mr. Warren is present, Mr. Pitts is present, myself, as it relates to this role, I mean, one of us will always be here, or we can ensure that we cross-reference our calendars, but I don't foresee that any of us are participating in your interview panel. You're just looking for assistance, I assume, with processing an offer or whatever you need. Ms. Vega would work directly with Ms. Winchester to ensure that your notebooks are compiled, that everything's in there, your resumes, your candidate applications. So we have that process down pat. Ms. Winchester does an amazing job. And then we would walk the board through the interview questions, make sure you're satisfied with those, and then your scoring rubric. Because there are very specific rules that we use and follow during an interview to ensure that we don't create an unfair advantage for certain candidates versus others. So we can talk more about that later. Mr. Bridges actually be the best person to walk you through that.
And I meant more so just as far as being able to, the last time when we did the interviews for Miss Vega's position, I know we met at Jim Miles. I think that was just because COVID and we were meeting there. But this is probably not the space that's best conducive to having an interview. So where, would it be the superintendent's large conference room or, and making sure that this, it's a time that we can use that space.
26 years ago, it was in the superintendent's large conference room.
Awesome. Thank you for that historical information, Wes. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. Mr. Sharpless, you're recognized.
While I certainly think it's important that whoever we hire has some sort of discussions with you, I also feel confident too that why is his name just evading me right now? From Boswell.
John Murphy.
Yes, John Murphy also will be able to sit in as an interim as well. So to me, I don't want to rush anything. I want to make the right hire. This is my personal opinion as a board member. Also, I would like to be able to echo Superintendent Hyde's words earlier. I would like to be able to use some of my contacts and talk to some people from around the state just to see how they did theirs. I'm not against putting another work session in at some point, since you wanted our opinions. Or board meeting to get this done. But I do not want to rush this hire. I'll just put it that way. But we can certainly do our due diligence between now and whatever future meeting.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Sharpless. I think what I'd like to do is meet with Mr. Bridges again. I appreciate our time yesterday as well. It was very much appreciated. And we can work through the protocols, the procedures, and so forth. And then I'll connect with Yvette and communicate with you board members to determine if we need to set up another special board meeting from now until within the 6-week period. So expect some communication from me on that through Yvette. All right. Ms. Wyatt, you're recognized.
Sorry, I have one more question, and this is more for Wes. As far as hiring timeline, I mean, obviously, when you're hiring teachers or a lot of time with school employees, hiring during the summer or at least advertising your positions during the summer is helpful just because people like to make those transitions at certain times. Do you see that with school board attorneys, or does the timeline matter as far as with school year?
I don't think it is as critical as it is with people who have a school year calendar to worry about.
Okay. Thank you.
Good feedback. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. All right. I see no other comments to come before the board. So at this time, our meeting is now adjourned.
We have